All right, picture this. It's 1932. The Royal Australian Artillery goes to war with a flock of birds. Now, that's not a punchline. It actually happened. Today, we're diving into the bizarre, true story of what's famously known as the Great Emu War.
It's the kind of question that sounds like it belongs in a cartoon, right? But this very strange chapter in history has a real and, honestly, a surprisingly complicated answer. If you've spent any time online, you've probably seen the memes. Australia declared war on emus and, well, the emus won. The legend is hilarious, for sure, but the reality? Oh, the reality is way more bizarre and fascinating than any meme could ever do justice.
So let's meet one of the main combatants here. The emu isn't just some big, flightless bird. We're talking about a creature that can be up to 2 meters tall, runs at nearly 50 kilometers an hour, and is surprisingly durable. You underestimate them at your peril, which is something the Australian Army was about to find out the hard way.
So how did this whole bizarre conflict even start? Well, it wasn't really just about birds. It was about a whole series of compounding disasters that pushed a group of World War I veterans to their absolute breaking point.
So let's trace the path here. After World War I, Australia tried to do right by its veterans, giving them land out west to farm. A noble idea, but this idea crashed head-on into the harsh reality of the Great Depression, and then it collided with a massive force of nature.
See, the heart of the problem was that the land these ex-soldiers got wasn't exactly prime real estate. It was marginal, tough farmland. So they were already fighting a losing battle against the economy and the environment before a single emu even showed up.
And then the birds came. And we're not talking about a few dozen, or even a few hundred. We're talking an estimated 20,000 emus. They were driven by drought from Australia's interior, and to them, these struggling farms looked like a giant, irrigated, all-you-can-eat buffet.
With the farmers absolutely desperate, they turned to the government for help. And the government came back with a solution that must have seemed pretty logical at the time: military intervention.
The matchup here is just something else. On one side, you've got this tiny military detachment, just 3 soldiers, 2 Lewis machine guns, and 10,000 rounds of ammunition. And on the other side, a massive, chaotic, and completely unpredictable foe. As the soldiers discovered, the emus, they don't exactly fight like a conventional army.
The whole campaign just devolved into a series of almost comical failures. The soldiers dreamed of firing into these dense packs of birds, but the emus would just scatter into small, erratic groups. A key ambush at a dam ended when a machine gun jammed. They even tried mounting a gun on a truck, but the ride was too rough to aim, and the birds were simply too fast.
The commanding officer, Major Meredith, he quickly started to get this grudging respect for his opponents. You can just feel his astonishment at their sheer resilience in his report. He even compared them to tanks and to legendary Zulu warriors. This wasn't just about their speed. These birds were incredibly tough. There were reports of them just continuing to run even after being hit by multiple bullets. The soldiers were completely demoralized.
So, after about a month of this sheer frustration, the military just withdrew. The press had an absolute field day, and the whole operation was seen as this humiliating failure. But is that really the end of the story?
I mean, based on that military campaign alone, it seems like an open and shut case. The birds won, the army lost. And that's the version of the story that became a legend.
But the story didn't end when the army left. The government just switched tactics. They started a bounty system, paying farmers for every kill. And the results? Well, they were dramatically different. The military operation took out under 1,000 birds. The bounty system? Over 57,000 emus in just 6 months in 1934.
So the emu problem was eventually solved, just not by soldiers. It was a combination of empowering the farmers themselves, giving them financial incentives, and building better infrastructure like stronger fences that ultimately did what the machine guns couldn't. In the long war of attrition, the humans adapted, and they won.
Okay, so if the farmers ultimately succeeded, why do we only remember the failed military campaign? Why do we remember the farce and not the solution? Well, that's where this story goes from being a local curiosity to a global legend.
Here's the real twist. Back in 1932, this was just a minor local event. It got almost no international coverage. The Great Emu War, as this huge global phenomenon, that's a pretty recent invention. A historical oddity that was resurrected and magnified by the internet for one simple reason. It's just so absurd.
And that leaves us with a really fascinating question. We choose to remember the funny, ridiculous story of a modern military losing to birds, not the more mundane reality of agricultural pest control. It makes you wonder about how we build our understanding of the past and which stories we decide to elevate from a forgotten farce to an immortal fable.